Thought I'd seen it all before. A world of trouble knocking at my door. But this ain't like nothing that I recall.
Welcome to In Crisis, Travel Retail Voices, our podcast series in which we speak to travel retail executives around the world about how COVID-19 is affecting their lives and businesses. In this episode, we hear from Scott Collier, Vice President, Customer and Terminal Services at Toronto Pearson International Airport, about maintaining services at Canada's largest hub, with traffic and business down by over 90%. These are unprecedented times, and we cannot assume nothing will change. The big strategic projects will continue, but will probably be deferred and take longer to complete. Meanwhile, the idea that the world of airport partnerships needs a rethink and the view that consumers should come first has been accelerated amid COVID-19, says Scott. Overall, he says, he remains optimistic. People will want to travel again, will want to shop, eat and drink at the airport, even if they travel in very different ways in the future. I mean, first of all, Scott, where are you today in the world and what's daily life like there? And overall, what's the situation in Canada like?
Well, I think it's pretty much like everywhere in the Western world now. So we're into week 5 of the Emergency Act. It's been established by each of the 10 provinces. So it's people are restricted to homes, only go out for necessities like grocery shopping. The F&B street side, forget airport for now. All street side, food and beverages closed, pubs, bars, taverns, you name it, garden centers, malls, everything is shut down. Look, it's wonderful driving around the city, although they discourage that as well. But we're really in lockdown mode, and it's surreal. People are proven to be remarkably resilient.
Yeah.
The stressors on social distancing. It took a couple of weeks for people to start taking it seriously. By and large, they are now. But obviously, now that we're going into week 5, there's a big drumbeat to say, okay, what's next? So clearly this is not going to last forever. I have 2 daughters, both well-educated, both off on furlough. So what's the old expression? A recession if your neighbor loses a job, a depression if you lose your job. So 2 out of the 4 in the family don't have any work, and these are educated people because their industries have been closed down.
In terms of your team and how you're managing the business at Canada's largest airport under these conditions, How are you coping? How are you people coping? And there's obviously a swathe of people from your own management to frontline staff among the concessionaires and airlines too.
Well, aviation world, airport people, the concessionaires, extraordinarily resilient people. So obviously this has been devastating to the commercial side of an airport operations. Our business, is now down over 90% over the last 4 weeks. So it's a staggering declines. But the people itself have just been incredibly resilient, very positive, very serious. Airport people by and large handle crises very well. They just focus on the job at hand. Toronto Pearson, we've taken a very deliberate approach. Gives our airline partners, the concessionaires, they've taken the brunt of this. Our job as Canada's largest airport has been focused candidly on making sure Canadians and repatriating Americans coming overseas, connecting through Toronto, everybody gets home safe and sound. So we've been less focused on ratcheting down costs, more about getting everybody safe and sound, and that's occurred over the last, since really about mid-March when it just hit its zenith. And so over the last 4 weeks, we've been solely focused on that, and I say mission accomplished. Now that we've got everybody safe and sound, we're going through the right sizing of our operations. So job 1 for us is to protecting our employees as the airport authority, protecting them to make sure we keep the airport open, because Toronto Pearson's open for business, obviously at a reduced level, but very much focused on our people and then right-sizing the facility. So whether it's consolidating different sectors of Terminal 1 and Terminal 3, reducing power consumption, we've done that in 3 phases over the last 3 weeks. So that's now complete as well, and that will take us through the end of April. So now we're starting to pivot, and I hope everybody is, and I get a sense everybody is, okay, hopefully we've bottomed out, all other things being equal. How might we restart this big industry again, and what things are we going to do? So we're engaging the airlines and the concessionaires, both formally and informally, in terms of, okay, how are we going to do this in stages? Obviously, we're not going to snap back to what it was like in January. Perhaps I'd like to hope that we're not planning that, and how we're going to do it with this expectation expectations of social distancing, safety, sanitization? What does that look like? How many staff do we need to do that? What's the cadence of reopening things? So a lot of planning work going against that.
In terms of that look forward, it's probably a tricky balance to look at the one hand of just managing what business there is today and also thinking about and planning for the future. And I know from my visit there last year, obviously there's many big projects in the pipeline, and many of them either had just begun or were about to in terms of capital investments. I guess amid all that uncertainty, can you plan towards those, or do you have to change tack on many of those right now?
Well, we soon have to change our point. What has struck me, again, I guess I'm an aviation person now into my 7th year, but I'm struck how rational the airlines have been, the concessionaires. So, and because everybody's going through the same boat. So your question specifically, okay, what are the growth plans that were on the table for the airlines, the concessionaires? Everybody still supports the fact that, over a period of 5 or 10 years, airports are still going to be here. Airlines are still going to be here. People are still going to want to travel. So let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. So the key, obviously with less revenue coming in for everybody, we have to be very thoughtful and very disciplined. But we're going to continue to execute a strategy that supports our long-term vision to be best airport in the world. And then what is that going to look like? How is it going to change? But the big strategic projects we have in play are still going forward. And we still have support from the airlines, which is obviously critical. But what we'll do is quite frankly, it's elastic. We'll just take longer to do it.
Yeah.
So rather than, starting next week for, hypothetically, we'll defer that until Q4 or to Q1. And everybody's, lined up against that because, no passengers, no business, no money. So the strategy was right before. It's probably right now, but it may be at a different pace, and there may be variations on it. So I'm impressed with the thoughtfulness of everybody. We don't want to just suddenly think what we're doing before was ridiculous, because that's not the case. This is the approach that my shop's certainly taking, I'm thinking about. We've tried, and I would argue unsuccessfully as an industry, at the consumer, the passenger, in the center of the decision tree. As an industry, we haven't done a very good job. And even my airport, we see passengers are our passion. Isn't it interesting that with COVID-19 appearing, that suddenly we're actually interested in the health and welfare of our passengers coming through, whether it be, congestion at international arrivals with immigration and customs, on departing, on PBS screening. So up until February 28th, nobody worried about it, with the exception of a few people who were particularly passionate about it. Now we've all had this epiphany that maybe this is now the time to start taking the passengers' needs more seriously. So I'm flipping this on its head and saying, maybe this isn't in a really twisted sort of way the best thing that could ever happen, because we're going to finally, as an industry, look at the consumer value chain across the aviation sector, when they're getting on a plane, when they're on the plane, when they're arriving at the airport, when they're transiting through, and how we engage our passengers differently. And if we put them first, couldn't this be, quite frankly, a different industry, sure, but actually a great industry? You think of telcos have always been horrendous reputation from consumer satisfaction scores. They just haven't evolved. I would argue we're probably as bad. But now this is an opportunity for us to seize this opportunity. I'll give you some examples. We've always had, I would argue, a transactional relationship with government agencies, and you and I talked about this when you were out here, and how we've tried through design thinking, put the passenger at the wheel and get people engaged to think about it differently. I think this is going to be an impetus for people to say, you know what, we've been bullshitting and going through the motions on this. Now it's time to actually put technology in place now, not to torture our passengers as we go through the process. And we're starting to, those conversations are happening right now, and there's a real recognition by all the partners in the airport, okay, it's time to start anew. That's what gives me hope, quite frankly. Of all the things going on right now, it's that there's this emerging sense of collaboration to do things differently. And if we do even half of some of the stuff people are talking about, we'll be a much better industry. And I think it'll be a better industry for all the players in aviation. The status quo is not an option, but we have to hold ourselves as an industry to a higher standard, because we've always compromised and we've always just looked the other way for the sake of the dollar. That's going to cost everybody. And I think that's an interesting opportunity in front of us.
We've been talking to people about how the industry is going to come out of this, and it sounds, I mean, you sound, despite everything, 90% down on business and obviously passenger numbers through the floor, that you retain a certain level of positivity about what the future might look like and how we'll emerge from this as an industry?
I do. Call me naive, but we do something very special that consumers want, and we support food and beverage. People love to drink. You think about COVID right now. What are people doing? They're learning how to cook again. They're experimenting with food. They're experimenting with wines. We're experimenting with spirits. They're shopping more online. People love this. It's still a consumer-oriented society, and if you provide the right products, how can you not be optimistic? People are making money during this. We unfortunately are taking the lion's share of the brunt right now, but I think there's a incredible opportunity going forward. I think we can be better than before and grow the business better than before. Will it ever snap back in 6 months? I doubt it. But over the long term, I'd still put my money in this industry in a heartbeat.
Scott Collier, thank you for joining us on In Crisis Travel Retail Voices.
And I swear one day we're gonna put this out behind us, and come what may, we will survive. I think it's safe to say that better times are gonna find us. Hope it won't be long till this trouble is gone.